Welcome to Dispatches from Quarantine. This is our first event. I'm Alexandra Kostulis. I'm the founder and executive director of San Francisco Creative Writing Institute, and I'm really glad you guys are here. We got a grant from the California Arts Council to present 4 different performances and reading series that all examine the pandemic in different ways. And so what we've done is we selected guests. Each performance, we've selected a different guest lead artist to host and curate the performance and bring in artists that they think are doing a great job in the space on the topic of coronavirus and how the pandemic has affected writing. I'm pleased to announce that for this event, San Francisco Poet Laureate Tongo Eisen-Martin will be beaming into our reading. He will share poetry from the pandemic's social movements. This series started out as a blog called Dispatches from Quarantine. It was a blog that I started just late at night as a mom, freaking out about COVID. And then it later became a series where we sort of solicited work from all over the world, and we got submissions. I just published the other poets of the Creative Writing Institute. So I published, at the time, Holly Hardy, Tongo Eisen-Martin, Paul Corman Roberts, and then whoever was my Facebook friend that was like, I have something to say about COVID. I was like, okay, send us a submission. And then it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and now we have 150 submissions, and it keeps going. And so I hope that you will bring your best work today from the pandemic social movements that you've written over the last few years and share with us. And I'm really excited to invite the Poet Laureate to share his work with us and hear, sort of have a dialogue about how COVID-19 affected poetry in our era. Without further ado, I'd like to invite a guest reader to come to the mic. Landon Smith is a father, professor, an introvert, and a Black freighter poet.
If you don't carve out a healing space, a legislator might use your flesh for sacrifice. Fascism fed farm-to-table, grassroots campaign can't rid the stench of shit in the soil. National Guard on bureaucrats speed dial, tell them niggers not to loot. Or air fresheners gonna spill blood onto ready-made caskets. Bodies of Black women sacrificed for collective white comfort. We have seen this script before. Yet y'all still ready to hold knives up to Black arteries. Democracy just a fable we rode past, crossing into this cemetery we wake up in on a loop. For the shards of Black protests to get beaten into another voter campaign, for Obama to stand next to a Black woman, waving clinking chains of Asada, grinding bones in the soil backed by Biden budgets, virtue signaling progress just to express shit billy clubs, and kill the English dictionary in you and you might be a revolutionary by nightfall. Offer your last breath to the asphalt, it'll ask if you at least fought back. Ask if you apologize to all the minute hands. Chain holder made a quilt out of your ancestors, sewed it loosely and told you let it keep you warm. Never had a dream within this colonial opiate. Capitalists othered a railroad worker than Silk Road traded them for dirt. Threw pig at a labor strike and watched the bodies fall. Greasy palms oil prison pipelines while a moderate priest was reformed. Property tax still funding school budgets, and they got the nerve to tell me to grab a picket sign while a rock laying right here. Smoking mirrors breeding infighting over blood money. All money is blood money. Thought we made it out the cotton fields just to be grandfathered in. Heard a whip crack in a handcuff class, in a sentencing hearing, in a salary negotiation behind bulletproof plantation windows, but I drag infected minds through the broken tires of my unread poems. McCarthyism smashed into my dinner plate, hoping to crack the communists from my swollen red knuckles. John Ehrlichman shoulder shrugs my car upside down to the part of foothill buried in flashing patrol lights, while Reaganism hovers above my neighborhood like smog in my kids' new lungs. Biden-era pinch strokes flood Lake Merritt with pay stations hoping to drown out sideshows. There is blood on your overcoat, Libby. What good is a poisonous leech, Libby, if I am still 3 quarts low after the confirmation hearing confirms me to be a necessary sacrifice on a white Jesus altar of justice, harmonizing about the beauty of my execution. South Carolina firing squad triggering my last rites. Before I become a useful bullet in the throat of my comrades, an empire sells bombs in the name of my great-grandmother's dirt-scraped knees. But I drag my lineage through dirt roads, sandstorms, scraping knees on cement cinder blocks stacked in the way. My wrist cut deeply on the journey, saltwater stinging bones showing before someone tells me I'm healed, tells me to move on. When I drag lineage by their wrists, wiping off eraser dust mixed with diamond flakes they sold back to us, saying that's all our hands were good for. Losing limbs between borders some European gave name to, that I should be proud of. that Singbei PA revolted to come back to. Maybe my wrist bleed on the chains he broke just to be Spielberg in white saviorhood. When I feel my lineage weighted down beneath Valongo wharf remains, paved over, just to be paved over, just to be built atop under silk cover smelling like liberation strangleholds, while I drag my lineage to a native language, not a native language, in hopes of speaking with lineage between borders and sandstorms I was told I didn't need to know. Enough Mende for struggle. I drag my lineage with dislocated wrists, separated at the broken tree branch, telling stories in contradiction to a tall tale pillar by monument and sand in my shoes. Meanwhile, this top chef says he is a white guy from SoCal. Says he has no culture, so he can't decide what to cook. Looking for sympathy on a plate, like I don't have sales receipts hanging from my family tree limbs. Like my mama's mama didn't have recipe claimed as family heirloom by a plantation dinner table. Chalkboard castration telling tall tales and colorblind pillow talk, but got the audacity to act like percentages make you whole. Stress from oppressed trauma might suffocate pops before Fruitvale becomes demolition tape, becomes parking lot burial ground, becomes museum plaque of what used to stand tall but was smothered by imperial ceremony. But what the fuck do I know? And who made saving you my problem when I'm still cast iron cut on wrist, still told to vote my way free with concessions this project paid me into, still finding white fingernails in African borders. Call it genocide again if you want to see a white nation stiffen, if you want to see what dodging a bullet does to a stuffed pocket, but throw the Mamian Empire at it and you might slow the awareness though. You might bake in enough war for the dough to rise naturally. I woke up a kidnapped victim the same day the teacher told me to put my hand on my heart. Haven't felt the beat of my own body for some time now. Might find it in colonizer pockets along with the keys to my lineage. Museum made a display of my remains, then made me pay for admission. Told me stealing is only stealing when the body can talk back. And while we're at it, I hate no oppression is in your mind ass motherfucker. Kidnapped victims falling in love with their captors. One said, America's for sale. Another said, let's see who can assimilate best, turn grandma's scars into theme park admission. But kill the pig in you or you'll find yourself singing love songs of shackles, glorifying Secret Service breath on the back of bloodstained suit collars. And for what? So you could preach genocide for sport? So you could dance on Seneca Village ashes? I'm still trying to figure out how to be black and unsurveilled. FBI vault redacted my file just to save skin. Blood not even dry on my bullet hole yet, but you can hear the same script being prepared. No dust on the playbook when its use is constant. When capitalist hellscape must be written as hero. Tax money funding assassinations abroad, but got the audacity to act like canceling student loans is immoral. Critical thinking cut off at the knees off of profit margin pastime. Usurper made their way into your mudroom and left blood on the hardwood. Sold you a tale about freedom and patriotism, about spreading democracy. But never pick up a book and you might think Cuba is destitute. You might think Palestine is terrorists. You might think blindfolds are true firing squad justice and soldiers' bullets in the backs of kids is honor. Might have you high on red bait before you can sell your labor first, before you could call healthcare equitable, before you could call capitalism meritocratic, before you stepped foot on occupied indigenous land and thought property tax was penance for assimilation, before you realized we all died by poison, died by colonized textbook, died by a language that stole you from you. Stole the kneecaps from your resolve and told you plantation life was the real American dream, then kissed you with poison tongue and told you your death had no color. But perhaps I am still hanging from a rope somewhere, and I do not have the wherewithal to see my own name memorialized in block and jar dirt. Perhaps I am still aspirating in a dungeon somewhere, unwilling to be dragged somewhere onto a boat for property maintenance. Perhaps I am pieces pieced together, still tied to previous iteration, now screamed into these breaths I now take with reluctance to revisit visualizations, knowing I am both here and in a rope, and in a dungeon, and in a chain anchor, straddling a past life and a half-life, unwilling to pass on pieces to any iteration of myself that does not understand that I am the last breath in a train track execution as much as I am the voice in the classroom. Keep seeing train headlights blinding my resolve. I am unable to breathe the air of the asphyxiated above dirt monument, not knowing what the strength looks like to hold that space on a straddle. My therapist keeps telling me I need to remember to breathe, but perhaps I am still hanging, still below ground, still afraid of a future with no future beneath a future of museum boxes and jars of dirt. Grappling with limbo, I am both here and nowhere, trying to find somewhere safe, somewhere free, somewhere not black and blue circle encrusted with settler colonialism telling me liberation is the ballot, or the billy club, the ballot, or the gun, the ballot, or the rope. Perhaps I am still hanging from a rope somewhere, trying to hold my great-grandfather's hand one last time before the sun rises and the coroner tells you I did this to my own body. You know, a real poet told me once that not every story has to appeal to the heart, it can appeal to the spine. Severed vertebrae shouting, hear me out, from straitjacket buckles and scratches on cement walls that made my spine property of the state, that made me 2/3 of a past the future left bloodstained baton swing, slush from bomb exploding outside what used to be my bedroom wall just long enough for the taste of rubble to be family heirloom. Nobody even asked where I wanted my body to be buried. I am talking to this soil like everything is a weapon formed against me. Melatonin making Medgar Evers my docent on this impending bullet train. Woke up 10 times lost. Coroner can tell you jokes 3 minutes past America if you wait long enough, but might diagnose you as a rebel if you speak too loudly about the cause of death. Every 20 minutes, another puppet dies by teleprompter. Tells a revolutionary to just vote if they want change. Tucks in sheets on deathbed for preparation. Hell, how you gonna make it out alive anyway? You might as well laugh through that ash coat and lungs. We used to breathe air, now all we do is drink water and pray to the fire next time. Burning flag flapping around a body somebody deemed illegal somewhere. Drew a border and said, I dare you to cross. Let's see if your lungs can take in more air than this bullet can take from you. First step is to dare you to dream. Second step, get you to fall in love with the sound of a growling stomach. Third step, put you on a postcard sacrificed to a tree branch. What good is the poet with no neck, the coroner will joke. Only half of the half he spoke to listened anyway. And my burial plot placed center stage for encore viewing. Floating on the Sierra Leone River, I am less weight than tree. Tree telling my neck it meant to shield me before I became a dash somewhere within this project where I can't even float. You know, a white poet told me once that not every poem needs to be a revolution. Like my pen not attached to a fist with scabbed knuckles from punching through oak memories, trying to talk to my uncle in Haiti I've never met who's trying to talk to my aunt's headstone in Brazil. These crop-dusted palms never got to touch. I must be a carpenter. From all these splinters, from stinging white prayer circles gathered around stapled corners, I am born a poet. And I have hitchhiked my way to a last meal beneath this tree. So let me pause for a second and see just how much Sierra Leone is left beneath my fingernails. Thank you.
Carla Brundage is a high school English teacher who hopes all her students will find and raise their voices.
Thank you. I wasn't sure what I was going to read tonight, but I settled on something I wrote kind of recently in this time frame about some of my students kind of put together in some poems. And I named this first one English A with a nod to Langston Hughes' English B. Was the word my student wrote today when asked how she felt. And you, and all of you in here. She side-eyed me, her meanest mug. It's you I hate the most, she seemed to be saying. For caring, for asking me to write my feelings. Feelings. Very good, I say. I'm proud of you for using your words. Usually she just talks about her dark place, a world where she would no longer be, that other word. Today, however, she rambles on and on, gnawing her brand new nails, peeling off her perfectly applied eyelashes one by one. The other students giggle, not so softly, at this exchange. Their patience ran out weeks ago. Someone coughs, shut up. Hey, I say, be kind. Is that the way to be kind? Well, she's not kind to you, comes the retort. I'm a grown-up, I sigh. My job is to help you see your own inner beauty. But I'm kind of smiling, because I know my students are actually beginning to like me. Is that so bad? Then comes the arrow. Part 2, trigger warning. In 5th grade, I began to call like a raven in class. Eyes rolled back, suddenly stiff, stare into space, mouth open, grand mal seizures, teacher fearfully dragging me one-armed to the principal's office. Kicking and screaming to consciousness, a mantra, be normal or disappear. Disappear me by drinking, swallow me whole to a dark place where I do not exist. This was the seizure, drowning and yet each time swimming for light, gasping for air. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Part 3, the next day, reset. Today she is smiling, dances into the classroom, pressing me in an unrelenting hug. I feel like writing an inspirational poem, she says. The darkness is gone, her darkness, mine. It's okay, I say. I'm so glad you are here. And I am. I'm glad we are here. My second poem is called Ghosts. My classroom is an intimate place. Apathy-filled backpacks, faces hidden under black hoods, masked sorrow. A hand may raise, a question posed, a comment dropped. Little L bursts through the door, his bravado bearing backpack, breaking anger. Life and limber, he cannot allow his body to rest in a chair, up, down. Each minute he paces the classroom, offering a laugh, a curse, a shocking moment of brilliance. Of course he can quote Sojourner Truth. But why should he? When his identity, illusory, he knows black men, including his father, tossed up like clay birds for target practice, the ghosts of bullets bouncing off their backs. Manhood can make dangerous thoughts when what is reaffirmed is invisibility. Revenge comes naturally. He knows that to be a victim is to not seek revenge. For a moment, he sits and writes a few lines of a poem, crumples it up, tosses it across the room, daring anyone to read it. Our eyes lock. Pick it up. The answer is a slow, deliberate lean, a taking back. There's a shrug, then a hoodie raised. The tension in the room condenses. The other students suddenly quiet, writing hurriedly of frosted windows. I turn my back, the ultimate sign of trust, and I continue to write on the board. He stands, and with all of his young voice asserts, I need to go to the bathroom. Sure, I say, not turning around. And when I do, he and the crumpled poem are gone. Thank you.
Norman Antonio Zelaya is the author of 2 collections of short fiction, Orlando and Other Stories from Puccino, 2017, and Gente, Folks, Black Freighter, 2022, inspired by his Nicoya heritage and his lived experience as an SF native.
Thank you. I read in a post that Tongo sent that this was about writings that came out of the pandemic. And for me, the stories about the pandemic were about immigrants, right? And as some immigrants, and as a teacher in the public schools who's taught almost all my career here in the neighborhood, stories have always been about immigrants. And thinking about that journey always in getting here. It was overcast, which made my agua tolerable, fresco. Washing clothes in the small yard, it was an innocuous afternoon, the same obligation, the same weariness. Salvador scrubbed the powder blue shirt on the cement lavadero, pounded and wrung the water out, then handed it to Henry to pin on the line. What am I going to do at Tia Chayo's, Mama? Study, meet your cousins, make friends. The sea is beautiful where she lives. You'll be happy, hijo. I want to study here, Mama. You'll study over there, hijo. Find a job, a house, una novia, maybe get married. Novia? The idea embarrassed Henry. Him, married? He laughed, blushed at the silly suggestion, scratched his throat. Ah, no, Mama. See? One day you'll marry. Henry looked at his mother, incredulous, mouth gaping. Salvador raised her eyebrows and nodded insistently. He'd get married and she'd become a grandmother, God permitting. Really, Mama? ¿Me caso? Sí. No. Estás loca, mamá. Your mother isn't crazy. You're going to have a lovely life, Henry. Vas a ver. Banging and a yell came from inside the house. Pase! La Daisy, who lived a few blocks away, called out for Salvadora, who answered that she was outside. But Daisy didn't hear her and shouted back, Where? I can't hear you. So Salvadora stopped scrubbing, yelled over her shoulder into the house, The patio! ¿A dónde? El patio, hombre! Finally, Daisy appeared in the back door. I couldn't hear, and she sat on the stool next to the large tinaja of cool water. She wore a pink floral dress, her long brown hair in a simple bun. She was pretty, linda. Salvador said Henry to get Daisy a glass of tiste. It was all she had to offer. He went quickly, then said he was going outside, but only out front, his mother said. He wasn't going anywhere else. ¿Oíste? Yes, Milagro? How are you, Daisy? More or less, mujer, and you? What's new? Henry was so grown like his father, Daisy thought, but made no mention. These damn boys. They took Henry to play baseball, but then got him drunk on guaro. And then he came home a mess, giggling like a fool. Her son didn't drink, but his supposed amigos liked to mess with Henry, and he didn't know when they were teasing him. He just says he was with friends, Mama. They were playing. She found him against the door jamb, barely able to stand, alone. Scoundrels didn't have the guts to stay with him until she answered the door. Sin vergüenzas. Salvadora snapped her shirt and pinned it to the line. She noted how dark the sky was, maybe rain, strange, ojalá que no. She'd have to take down the laundry. Salvador slapped the sudsy shirt on the lavandero and scrubbed. Puchica, Henry ruined his clothes with his friends. Daisy. Salvador looked up to find her friend holding the glass. She hadn't taken a sip. Tears fell into her lap. Daisy, what's wrong? Jairo. They took him. People have been talking about things getting worse. The fighting was escalating and soldiers were needed. They talked Daisy and her husband. Their other two sons were too little, but Jairo was of age. So Sergio said it was best to take him out of Managua, far from here. They crossed the country to Bluefields, where Sergio's family was. Jairo would be safe. But it turned out the fighting was building out there too, in the swamp, in the middle of nowhere. Can you imagine? They'd take kids. The army came for kids. So they took Jairo to train him to fight. And Sergio was missing too. Well, he wasn't missing. He was arrested, but his family didn't know anything about him. Only that he was taken to jail because he got in their way. He fought. He tried to keep Jairo from them. But no matter. They arrested him, which could mean he was dead. Jairo was just a boy. They say the whole army was just boys, inocentes, and even a few girls. Jairo didn't know how to fight, didn't know about the government or the Sandinistas. Solo es un chavalo, just a boy. They had him, mi hijo, Salvadora. What do I do? It had been 6 weeks since he was taken. Can you imagine, Salvadora? How long it took for them to tell her that Jairo was gone. What was she going to do? She had no idea where he was. How was that possible? Salvadora was stunned. She dried her hands on a rag, faced Daisy, thinking what to say. Lo siento, Daisy. Daisy attempted to drink, then set the glass on the wide lip of the tinaja. He was so happy to leave with his father. Jairo adored him. I thought at least Jairo was going to be safe. Salvador knelt in front of Daisy, took her hands, kissed them. They cried together, shared few words the rest of that afternoon. Henry was leaving as soon as Salvador could make it happen. 3 months later, Daisy received word from a cousin of her husband that Jairo was wounded in a firefight to take a hill outside Puerto Cabezas. He was shot through the leg and bled in the mud for hours before he was dragged out. He wasn't being moved. What about Sergio? The cousin didn't know. Assumed he was still under arrest. They both remained far away in a part of the country almost foreign to people in the capital, a region unimaginable to a world that knew little to nothing of Nicaragua. Thank you.
Okay, our next featured poet is Dante Clark. Dante Clark is a poetic soul and child of the blues.
So supposedly, Some say that the sweet silence and spiritual scourging should starve out the source of our stupidity. That the scraping of sin and savagery soaked in our skin is somehow the set services of a southern system, sustained as slavers, self-said superiors to susceptible servants said to slave, seed to seed, season to season, shore to shore, slaves, saved by slave ship. It's something scary, ain't it? Such a sad story and a surplus of suffering for the swarthy. So my strongest suggestions to you students is to stay strapped, sharp, smart, stand tall, sturdy, and speak seldomly. Sometimes sacrifice and speech save the sheep from the suffer of the sickle. Sometimes separating self from show-off, showboating, and such silliness may salvage some sewage souls surrounded by silhouettes of sinking ships and sharpshooters shooting at 7.62s. Sure, some say it's safe to slip through the shadows, sidestepping snares, and stay studying. Study. Yet studying don't solve sorrows. And scratching surfaces, shucking and stuttering slumps shoulder sounds like straight sucker shit. Stupid. Shucking and stooping for stipends and statues are now suspended. So I say stand straight and stay solid. If study, then study scriptures. 7 sunsets straight seeking the sure shalom of Shiloh. Or B, thinking the thoughts that trauma teaches the thinking. Because they trying to train those of us that's thoroughbred to talk tersely and timid, to teeter. Teeter till teetering teaches us to trace to the third trace of toddler, to be tripping, tumbling 10,000 times till we're tossed over to the tango of taunting tales that's told to us about their tenacious taboos. The tragic traffic, that trackless, the torture that's tattooed in the thrusting trials, trekking with tribulations, always there to twist and touch the torsos of the talented 10, the targeted. The 10 toes of the toughest teenagers traumatized by the tactics that the tyrannical task force used to tame us by torch. They're attempting to tear through our time, While there be teachers, thieving in temples, taken to the temples be tilted, tied or tithe, and this piece be tipped to them. The tongue-tied, tied ticks that's tricking the people. To trample, triple out their treasures, trash to the totality of the treacherous terratome, the tasteless territories that the thugs sent to, where there be telephones that televise a tirade of toxic tears. Ooh, that's truism. The thinking of thoughts that trauma teaches the thinking. How we'll go through total turmoil just to tell our tribal testimonies through telephones. Telephones. Ring, ring the boogeyman. Tell him I got a song that'll string that ghetto bird. His grave can sing along. And I'll be on the run from the soulless barking by the body count, 'cause those are offerings made for the devil's team. And by the time I get to Arizona, they will have you believe that we are all prophets of rage and mind terrorists, because I don't want to be called your nigga. Because I wrote a letter to the New York Post and made a boast that we had shut them down. And I bet they say we too much posse. We too much rebel without a pause, like black steel in an hour of chaos, but don't believe the hype. We only bring the noise that's louder than a bomb that'll raise the roof to the security of the first world, because we want all power to the people. But the CIA snuck and set a time bomb for a mega blast and turned our revolutionary generation into the night of the living baseheads. No, not because my Uzi weighs a ton, but simply because they fear a black planet. And if y'all knew about the family ties of the Freemason pirates in the presidential White House, who were hustling, moving base, and got rich off cocaine, turning our Silk Road into a 9/11 free enterprise of black opium, where prayer over pots and pans can turn into gunplay and hell of smoke and brimstone, just for a face to be riding through my ghetto in the valley of death, speeding in the Eisen-Martin, music super high, chucking a peace sign, sucking down diced pineapples, drying their tears of joy at others are sleep-talking Russian roulette with free guns on private property. Then you'll know how to stay dangerous, speak the truth, and beat the odds. Or you'll be having close encounters with an El Dorado sunrise, that feels like a wildflower next to scrap metal that smells like fire. When people are satisfied with watching the evening news for a sign of the times to come down with the sun, I guess getting grown for a crybaby becomes a scarlet fever that spends the night in your mind and be thinking out loud. Have you up at grandma's house searching through 1,000 words of gifted parables at the tip of champagne glasses, waiting for one of those sweet Lord interludes to make me feel way back home again. But who cares about the art of a noise of a would-be killer if it ain't a charity case? Ring, ring, the boogeyman. Tell him I got a song that'll string that ghetto bird. His grave.
That was beautiful, beautiful writing. Thank you so much. I'd like to now introduce to you the San Francisco Poet Laureate, Tongo Eisen-Martin.
Yeah. Right on. My failing as a jail spirit or a specific custody for me, Monk. Almost a fist through the marquee, they beat me like old pearls into riverbanks of an assortment of black latitudes. So many stabbed up instruments, nothing left of us but sweet Chicago raised 1919, Monk. My first poem as a white man. And all I see is a depopulated and obedient abyss, twisting to the metronome ticks of my mother and father and baby prison society. God doesn't even seem possible. I run every street, I light every cigarette, I conjure body language, I live in someone's terrified arms. There are these 1820s church pews unpainting themselves. There are these cracker doves, and the prison just keeps getting older and older. And I know you have to be a genius, invite the devil into Reconstruction. You have to chase music even while you're dying. My conscience is clean, but still not the blues. More gallant rats in a death mask that fits millions. Do you find me morbid, Monk? I woke up on a battlefield and also looking down from the crystal of a wind chime. I was a rooftop without a city, trying to figure out the right thing to do with my spirit change subtext, clinking coins, dialoguing like God's efforts. The carpenter's body was black, right? Underground body, simile nothing, abstraction nothing. It's society time, detested and forgiven in this universe, letting me try my mind again. The police pantry was well stocked, and there I was, not participating in street life, my hands far from the self-talk. You could actually see police leverage bobbing up and down in the nuclear harbor. You could see flattened massacres of black people. The biography's done, neatly stacked on top of my infant body, sleeping through my first imperialist summer, hospital floor swept up of all 10 million bullets, my conscience in drum patterns strangely perceived, no home away from police insecurities, no working class artifacts, just the state mythos and its love balladeers. Europe serving two masters, maybe 200,000 in a minor Christ, someone begging for change next to biographies, stomachs pumped next to biographies. I had all these 7-day candles lit, Monk, and I knew I was just not getting it. The pain was just not sliding down the notes right, not saving someone's world, just odd walls of fear asking, what is there actually a true self between these mildly confident walls, recalling how the front of the body feels outside. Social contracts well dressed and courted shrewdly, stabbed at shrewdly. Now, the boss belongs to the masses now. Got the boss likeness on a string like a love poem. Wild stride speeches replace memories of the boss. We got machine guns in the communist bar tonight. We're naturals in the communist bar. Boundaries are just a little death. We stand outside the gates of San Francisco listening to some good preaching. Congratulations, your mercenaries hurt. Your money jungle hurts, your mouths hurt. Merchants of frenetic white flight, luckless and therefore well-armed primitivism, reaching down into the patterns of your soul, making for funny stories. I hope they didn't name any schools while they had those kids in those cages. Joy returns to decent revolutionaries, puts a hermitage into fascism. Saint Fallujah thumping your shoulders, family in needed. God crawling in between the bullet heat. Yes, our grandparents' God. Thought experiments in the last words of black organizers. Let's make a periodical of their last words, Lord, of the remaining addresses of black power. We become Angola on both sides, a humor of axis, a foot race through public property, remilitarized, pork improved, celestial pork, platinum minted pork. Choose your words carefully, pork. The first mirror was clay, the first human was not. Humanity recommencing near the weight pile. It would be nice to sound Universal, not heroin, old heroin passing messages. Heroin left laying around the empire, colonizing intellectual as a guest in their own hand. It's like a life's work depends on replicating Birmingham caravans or particularly Birmingham. 1 to 5 shells flying at the state capitol sign. Thank you for the resources. Big Ben scatting up the throat of a surrogate fascist in love with their one eyeball at the parade with tuxedo-colored guns marrying the cowardice. A rerunning white politician is born in a black neighborhood. Black neighborhood taken as a stage of history. Born of a black messiah is born black. Legislates in some dimension fused to the side of loud steps. Copper summer rise, but still some blood involved, still some necessary slums involved. Ragtag armies masked in Western height and primary emotions, the light of cocaine, both warped and not warped enough. Images can be cousins. What happens when you step outside the country sugar gorging? What good are you all to the world sitting in heaven? Who are we gonna lay out books for? Who's gonna touch the knives at night and sing to the gaps in between shadows, gaps between our love? Who's gonna teach our knives to sing Tobacco Road, teach them that they are family? A picture of black socialists in a perfected boneyard, in a tributary boneyard, whispering the cheekbones, dim in the wind. A black socialist who will live for 100 years in this graveyard to make this point, that we're in too much pain for naming ceremonies that ancestors need to inflict on the world our continuity. 1,000 good deeds decorate the 20-year police precinct janitor, a janitor who called it, who needs slides but not like you. Telling you of a half-dead humanism to pass the time, a math teacher in a little red book. I used to dream of revolution and even enjoy the dream. I have at least fallen around love. Reading poems next to my friend with low side of fire escapes in their teeth, talking about the gun I'm going to bring to the segregation. Trying to protect children with poems, protect these store runs. Avenue Nights is a hospital bar. I can't make out the system of craft. Is this run the house dust circuit? Are these abandoned houses of various rank? Art here like Carmelist soldiering, falsifying my first solo on this stage, on this rickety enemyness. Ladies and gentlemen, here to make some warmongering of your night, these receipt paper poems, adorning my red eyes with the self-inflected fatherhood, over-policed eyes, state impressionism bouts and back and forth between skin and ski mask, an emotional rage, a wobbly self-portrait. Amongst these church giants, calcified personas present, grown man depression, scraping cotton against uptown silhouettes, seeing their shadows, all manner of bombs. Kings of the poem, baby. Genuine marvel of the history of poems. Welcome to the mild bourgeoisie, revolutionary street fairs, our weariness, well-proven socialism, the death of both your and my hip-hop lord. Make your greenback, ruling class confetti art somewhere in this, earn stripes with 3 hands, cut God off your shirt. Look out the world from the inside of an ink stroke. I don't mind the Mississippi steel, sir, but may I have a saxophone from a different city? Bright lights, lethal injection routine, last words, is my family here? Take all disrespect as the universe in motion. I write poems today. I kill America today. 5-year anniversary of my stallion. Swamps talking mid-sized activist files like songs sitting under the street. Slave castles growing and growing, keeping notebooks alive the wrong way. Human temper sitting still. Going to Africa in mysterious ways. The harp that turned the hand toward the founding of Chicago. You know what my trick is. I'm weak first. Before anything, I first become weak. Kick a hatchet down the street and all around the city. A grandmother's Milwaukee or the guys my grandmother robbed. Fresh faces in the spirit house we put behind the say, we have God's permission to make a plan. Gradually, the poem becomes decently empty, be weak. Let the ability to write slip until only one fingertip is left on the handle. Then in a flash, return with a slave castle and a cup of change. Ladies and gentlemen, we assure you that tonight's entertainment is not judging you. We paid them really well. Our perfect confidence in the sun, in commemoration, every tambourine 1,000 miles in every direction playing in the California rent party, rattlers dancing and bleeding over guys non-whitened skin, waiting for the cornfield to shrug. We are forgetful, but your ancestors nevertheless. Slowing down the poem to the speed of sweet light, the speed of bedless deaths, the bones of fast friends, near a pile of first fruits, a pile of imperialist failings, oppressor and oppressed, give their guns the same nickname. Underground working class sort of goes back to school, sort of studies revolution. The summer belongs to itself now, as does the sharecropper's guide, as does the death mask. Real advice from Malcolm, real rose cores over my Memphis skeleton, a tenor part before dying, playing to our waning blood pressure. Our penny-plated gun, the last of the space-time tuck. White people would have sold us standing naked on anything. Would have sold us off a huge garden crystal or peacock feather. Would have sold us off a stack of doo-wop records if they could. Would have sold us off the perfection of the cosmos. Forestry of drug paraphernalia. Suburb spikes in the grass, syringe jungle like a sick bed. Execution needle that became a society's bottleneck. Preamble, news talk, or nuclear scientists thank for their work. Activists who don't scream black power, rather black component. A painful season gone sentient and well-dressed, taken as a whole, taken in puppet skin, a sentient Sunday that married 15 sticks of dynamite. We are houseless now and dancing our waistlines into a courtroom floor, Atlantic Ocean throwing my voice into the city weeds of the other Confederacy. I double down on this poem, on this gang friendship, signs of apocalypse in all directions. I run this poem into the ground. On my fifth skip meal today, Lord, we become even better friends. Dollar store notebooks in a mass context, pen cap full of bullets, California color liners played out with necro protest types who sleep on the other earth while we are waiting to shoot on a muralist behalf. This waiting to shoot an old man's truancy of sorts, or tear stain on a Panther pamphlet. Houseless bookseller speaking about Lil Bobby the Conqueror, a crisis of open air corrections, chemical extradition, and war songs wearing off. Around the corner from South Texas, you pretended that prison is a river. You married your American cop. Black skin, white mantras, like normal speed bullets, changing a normal life, like walking back to the United States in defeat.
So our next reader is Don Juan Carter Woodard. Don Juan Carter Woodard is an activist, teacher, father, and poet who believes we are the storytellers of our generation.
Most of our Tuesdays turn out with us doing a writing workshop called Patrice Lumumba. So this right here is one of the pieces that I've done recently. This one right here is called Authenticity and Code Switching. Feel like I need to get an appraisal done. My inner diamond doesn't shine the same. Dingy is the best way to describe it. Muddy from being stepped on. How often do I shrink so that you don't feel small in my presence? Shame on those that chose to create gentle giants, having to test my words before they drop out of my mouth like atomic bombs, having to discern what is proper, wearing out my brake pads with every new encounter. I'm not trying to make it on that list. Raised in the place that makes you sharp as a razor blade, only to be dropped in a world of pillows. I tread these grounds lightly. Finding my biggest fears is my only power. What did they say? Die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain? Brought up believing in vigilante justice. We clean up our own backyard so that the other races don't have to. Accountability should be my middle name because I see all of the blemishes in this picture before the Photoshop. Broken glass tastes better on an empty stomach. Following the footsteps on the fearless leaders that run face first into oblivion, they also told me faith and fear cannot live in the same place. Riding the fence like an equestrian until it turns into a raging bull, forcing you to pick a side or end up on your ass. Social media overriding my dominion. When did the wolves have to start trying to follow the herd? When they said that the meek shall inherit the earth, I didn't know that they meant that shit literally, so now please and thank you is a complete sentence. Having to dumb down my conversation to fit in your range of intellect or to make my voice go up an octave so that the tone doesn't spell aggression. How long can you cage a lion before he really feels like a house cat? Hurting myself today just to see if I still feel, because hurting you may cause a conversation I'm not interested in. This one right here is called Acorns to an Oak Tree. Asking the leaves what it means to be the roots. I guess that's an unreasonable question. Digging deep into the soil only to see how far it goes, pulling from a place rainwater refuses to go. Only tears can penetrate this deep. Like to see them asking why it must be buried to grow. Strangely, you learn a lot from the darkness. Some of what you learn only comes from being unheard, and sometimes the places that you go only come from being unseen. Like that bastard piece of fruit dangling from the branch, unable to see your purpose. Wondering how old you become before you stop being afraid of the unknown, and how many storms do you have to survive before you can smell the rain in the air, counting the leaves one by one, crying as each one changes color, not knowing that it's all a part of the bigger picture. We shed our old ideas as the seasons change. Sometimes growth requires loss. realizing that most of these birds that lay in my branches are not my friends. They only use me for shelter and sustenance. Maybe that's what I'm here for. Built for on a grand design, but I still can ask, why do you use me? And why do you choose to misuse me? Fear of being cut down in my prime just to feed somebody else's fire, standing up against hurricanes, tsunamis, tornadoes, and unexpected fires. These are stories that the oak trees cannot inject onto the acorn, because the process that it takes to get there is a tag that takes a long time, and the acorns have problems of their own. I guess lineage happens when the acorn falls and becomes buried next to the oak tree. Understanding only comes from experience. But I guess we have to remember every oak tree at one point was an acorn. Now I only know the right words to tell my teenagers how to plant these damn seeds.
Beautiful writing, everyone's beautiful work. We're gonna hear more open mic, but I thought we need a little break. This is the first in-person event I've hosted since the pandemic times. So, and this was a surprise hosting. So I'm glad you're here, and that this is the first one also that San Francisco Creative Writing Institute has hosted in person since 2019. So we started with a bang, which is great.
This one is called Before the Next Surge. The landscape seems to begin in the far ocean under fog. It dips below the bridge, spans the bay, unloads at the port, pushes through the flatlands, scoops up older houses, their past owners evicted out to the delta. When the last crisis edged in, investment firms scored the underwater homes to rent out. One of the firms began with 2 investment bankers from Lehman Brothers, which itself arose to trade cotton from plantations. They dropped millions in California to block rent control, while they leveled the Amazon for soy. The same firm sold groundbreaking bonds, each one merging 1,000 tenancies, a pledge to investors that rents will surge. They leverage a city block and rearrange the neighbors when it's time to make good. Same thing's rearranging the weather too. Something shifted. Temperatures climb with the rents. Whole months turn to smoke. The rainy season narrows to a week. Not always. There are lulls, off years with price relief, nearby super blooms of poppies and lupins before we head back down into drought. In a region rocked by investment capital, the decades take on a heartbeat. Boom bust, as if time were a pulse that undulates the landscape all on its own, as if what remakes the city didn't vibrate with intent. Still, as rents rise, some tenants go for broke. They picket and strike and win, secure their buildings, shore up the ground below. We're always building for what approaches, always tracking the next roll. And maybe in the next season of rain, when the next atmospheric river brings a half continent of vapor over the coast, it will meet a new energy below.
Beautiful work. Our next reader is, I can't read your handwriting, but it looks like Leary R. Did I say it right? Lady. Lady R. Welcome, Lady.
This is an anecdote. So, living in fear, whomever has the gun wins. While gardening on a backyard of a Berkeley residence, upper middle class, white suburban, I wondered momentarily about how displaced I felt, how out of context. I was recently in a play about a boy from the hood suddenly transplanted into a prestigious boarding school for the children of the elite. A coming-of-age story about the confrontation that is being the other in a purely moneyed class. neighborhoods with benches to sit and sip on coffee, the rest of the world oblivious and faint. The boy is an athlete on a scholarship. With privilege comes responsibility, the ability to exist as a ghost, to murmur and follow. Exclamations are neither encouraged or dissuaded. The languor of visibility, being seen. As I shoveled the soil in manure fertilizer, I looked up at the bright blue sky, distilling light and birds in flight. Am I safe here? Would someone have reasonable doubt to shoot me on the spot for trespassing? I was there on a day job, a trial. First day on the job. I didn't feel safe. Courage was summoned. Incongruent realities for the boy growing up the other. When sacrilege saw the bodies of buffalo piled up on top of one another like some pyramid of Giza, out of this mound, a society of pent-up old money, generational wealth. Class tells its narrative as the other auditions to have a chance at one. A story to tell as stands graceful, green, and shod, emerging from the ground. The sight of the other and presence imbued like a fancy, shiny star blossoming upon one's forehead, point blank, assassin.
That's beautiful. And I love the image of the prep school and the elite, and the dichotomy. And I also wonder the same things in San Francisco. Our next reader is Matthew.
Thank you very much. I open my arms to the hipsters of a certain age, to the newborns of a certain age, to the teenagers of a certain age, who all said they were too old for revolution, who all gathered outside Coit Tower, who all gathered together under the last sepia glow of the fading westward sun, under the birds, the crows, and the crows, gyring, wheeling, squawking, screeching in a mad tempest, who gathered above the Google search grid, pillaging North Beach for an unoriginal, authentic thing to say, above the graves of Ferlinghetti, Ginsberg, all the monument-smashing authors who are now monuments to be smashed of a certain age, who have been discussed and defined and deadened, who nonetheless remain unknown and unwanted and still limitless in their humanity, which exists even in the t-shirt-clad businessmen of a certain age, and the mustachioed mama's boys of a certain age, and the flamboyant conformists of a certain age, gathered around Coit Tower to see the murals, which were not painted by Diego Rivera, but rather by students of a student of Diego Rivera, who all lent a hand in a collective, hopefully horizontal effort to show the city below in its fullness, its richness, its contradictions and capaciousness, more completely than the artists and the audience thought possible, let alone permissible, to the shamans of a certain age, to the druids, to the medicine men, to the seers of a certain age, to those who heard the call, those driven by utopian disgust and madness and egoism, those outcasts and vagabonds and leaders of a certain age who marched up to Coit Tower to unfurl, finally and despite reality, the banner of freedom, not for Instagram, but for the onlookers on the sidewalks, the Marlon Brando armed pedestrians looking down from the balconies, the nippled sailors in Tom of Finland attire gazing out from the top decks of the vast megalodon ships of commerce, sailing out along AI lines to neo-colonial ports in Okinawa, Valparaiso, Santa's workshop, who dream of women's torsos naked in the waves, following their ship like dolphins, their breasts and hips and Amazon rainforest pubes drenched for other men, drenched for better men, who read the tarot cards of their lovers under fog machine mysticism while theorizing about the most esteemed Talmudic scholars of the Babylonian exile, who wrote some of the earliest lines still legible on the now unfolding palimpsest parchment of the U.S. Empire Forbidden document entitled, by an anonymous collective of authors, The Banner of Freedom, which exists everywhere, which anyone can carry, which belongs equally to you and to me. The Banner of Freedom, winding through Vesuvio, the bar at the end of the world. The Banner of Freedom, winding through the lonesome bedrooms of corporate white America, winding through the still standing woods of Mir, along the jagged shoreline of Marin, down into the whale-watched trenches deep below the windows of the sea where the lovely mermaids flow, outside T.S. Eliot's resigned mind, and the minds of all the men of a certain age, still unlearning, despite the unrecognized efforts of the inspiring women of a certain age, still teaching their pupil partners how to be the adults of a certain age, still trying to become their childhood wise, street smart, binary beyond selves, dancing hand in hand down Haight Street with the not too late unironic hippies, dressed like medieval troubadours with peacock feather hats, Sergeant Pepper's epauletted jackets, and Walt Whitman hair down to their ankles, walking silly through Market, walking gold on California, walking decolonial along Columbus, walking winding snakewise up Lombard until finally, long after we let the western sun set and we greet the new moon so that our own city's stars could shine still brighter, still angrier, still more defiantly, courageously, and freely there, under the vast, cracked dome of the sky, leaking Milky Way like so much longed-for cum and leaping sperm and euphoric jizz, there, circled around Coit Tower, amongst those who were not your people, whom you now call your people, with ones who were not your beloveds, whom you now call your beloveds, with a self that was not your own, whom you now call I, in the age of a certain age, in the place of a certain age, in the infinite of a certain age, when the spangled images of the world parade before your eyes open wide, when the heroes and the villains, when the lonesome mothers and the lonesome fathers of the disappeared, when the unhoused professors and the iconoclastic students seated at the feet of every Buddha and seated at the feet of no Buddha on the unmanicured lawn of the long-forgotten Presidio Grove, where land's end meets ocean's end and where life on earth began, to a destiny not manifest, to a future written on no scroll, to a universe in which our part is merely one bit on the margins of a world being born every moment. To you outside that world, to you trying to get inside that world, to you inside that world, to everyone, we open our arms. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much. And I recognize some of the Ginsberg references because I just had my method writing class look at Howl for the rhythm. So we were really studying it. I like the way you turned it. Thank you so much for coming to Dispatches from Quarantine, and especially for listening to the pandemic poetry event. I feel moved, so I'd like to share with you a poem that I wrote, trying to think about all the social movements and incorporate them in what's been happening in the world, and all of just being in lockdown and then living an inside life and then seeing all the horrors, and it filters through however it does. And so for me, the war in Ukraine, it just got me thinking about all the injustices. So here's one of my poems that I wrote on this theme. Between Two Walls, for Anastasia. In the springtime of another time, in another place, we welcome the daylight and little shocks of green growing amid sadness. On the one side of the world, people are going back to normal after 2 years of being inside. On the other side, people are melting snow, once to drink, again to shower, the third time to flush the toilet. They will bring their babies to the hallway during bombardments, keeping them safe. Keeping them safe is a matter of hiding between two walls, chasing paper airplanes, making it a game. At the same time, I am cleaning toxic mold out of my life and apartment after being inside in between these walls for 2 years, hunkering down from COVID and the fires with a 2-year-old and a newborn, now a 2 and 4-year-old, now a 3 and 5-year-old, actually. I feel sick for the first time since the reopening. I can feel the tension. I sit on the grass as my 2-year-old sleeps in the stroller in Golden Gate Park and drop down my page. My pen hits this page. We slight poets gather, sit together, 3 of us in a row. Together, a bony resistance. We slight poets will try to sing from whatever sliver of waxing crescent hope we can lay beneath our fingers. From now to eternity, these shiny moons of existence. As long as I am alive, I will sing into the turns. I will start acting like a poet. So today is the day of death. Tonight we say Kali Anastasi, good resurrection, and we wait for tomorrow, at midnight, for the light to shine in the darkness. In the last few years, we've all been beaten down, but somehow we emerge, truthful, resilient, drowned by grief. No matter how long you oppress evil one, you cannot kill them, and they will find a way to live, as Anastasia has, to fly airplanes with her 2-year-old along the corridor between the safety of 2 walls on Good Friday, as the comfortable mourn and wait for resurrection come to the church in heels and furs and kiss the icons. Resurrection is hiding in the safety of 2 walls with her 2-year-old, chasing toy airplanes, sending her husband out for food, making shadow puppet theater in the rest between 2 bombs. I watch on from my country that only understands simple things, good or evil, black or white, night or day, World War I or World War II. The truth is a little bit more obscure, so let me explain. We divide up our losses and our wins. We will sing in fallout harmony. We will sing in the language of thought. We will sing for oppressed victim, for the refugee, for the orphan children found in the street by a lady soldier who cleans their wounds. You will sing for the white man who gores the black man for a parking place with an iron pole and gets away with it. I will sing for the Yazidi children who came up to me on the road smiling in 2016. You will sing for the Ukrainian who kills the other one for food, for the Russian who slaughters and rapes the innocents. Here, you sing here, and I'll sing there and there. Lamentations for the dead, for the living, for the oppressor and the oppressed, for black and white, occupier and occupied. We will find a light in the darkness, the world, the sudden vapors, the oracles only see so far. My stomach is sick with the future. My palate tastes of ash, of a utopia long burned down. In Golgotha, mentally weak always murder the mentally strong. Maggots falling out of the mouth of truth. The brainwashed say when interviewed, they're killing each other. They put those bodies there. They're killing themselves, they say. They're faking it, like they faked the Holocaust. It's not that bad. It's just a territory, a military exercise, a slight occupation, not a war. He darts his eyes from side to side in their own war. If you're going to rape a woman, dear, while at war, the Russian bride is intercepted as saying, at least wear protection. How do these people celebrate their Easters? Do they wear stolen crosses of the Ukrainian women while they pray, or the ring of the dead black man who they killed for being the wrong color, too close to their driveway to get away with it? Do they dye their eggs on the proper day? Do they know all the right songs? Do they sing all the hallelujahs? Evil is polite when it wants to be. Evil is always hiding in the cracks of the shadows. Evil is in the hearts of the smoldering eyes of the haters. Evil pretends to be strong, to offer a momentary protection. Evil feeds off your terror and relishes in it. They live like there's no tomorrow, these people. But do they have 2-year-olds who fly paper airplanes in between two walls? How do they dare watch what is going on and not go mad? How do they wait for the end of the world? Are they charmed by the tinkling bells at the country club? Do they make love to their wives, their mistresses in the dark, taking all the sundries for themselves and leaving everyone else to starve? These people will dance on our graves if we let them. They will wear our stolen jewelry like animal skins. They will run away to unknown lands. They will steal our children and teach them to hate us, to hate themselves, to forget their own names. They have eaten the great lie like arsenic in their tea cakes, and they will only realize when it is too late, and they're paralyzed in death, eternity, still unable to move. And we, slight poets, we will sing until we run out of breath. We will sing until we find each other in the dark. We will sing until we burrow out a hollow in the bones, discarded around the streets. We will sing until we find a place to hide in. We will sing until we have sung to the end of breath. So much living in between these two walls. There is a galaxy between these two walls, like a galaxy between two stars, because resurrection, Anastasia and her 2-year-old live on, and today is a new day. I thought I'd end it happy, so I think the first draft was dark, and then I was like, let me end it kind of happy because it's too much. But anyway, I was moved by all the artists. They were amazing. You guys are amazing. The open mic, thank you for helping us rebuild community in person. And please come to our events and online. We're at SF Creative Writing Institute, SF creativewriting.institute, sfwriting.institute, sorry. And we're San Francisco Creative Writing Institute. We're in DuBose Park, Harvey Milk Center for the Arts, and we're also in Counterpulse Theater in the Tenderloin. So hope to see you around and in Zoom, and we'll be online forever. Thank you so much.